So we have a mouse in our house, and that means I'm spending an awful lot of time cleaning and tidying. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I tidy my house, I always just find a ton of plectrums. I mean, it's just ridiculous how many of these I find, and it appears that I have zero loyalty when it comes to one particular pick. I just tend to kind of accumulate different ones. Some of these are probably new, and some of these I've probably had for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. But it does give me a good sample size to be able to test out different thicknesses, different materials, different textures, just to really see what difference they make. So I think I'm going to do this on the acoustic guitar, because then there won't be kind of any effects or anything in the signal chain that might impact the tone. So all the tone you'll be hearing will be basically from the pick and the strings, but that's not going to change. So it should be a fairly accurate test, or at least as accurate and scientific as I can make it. I'm not a very scientific guy. So speaking of scientific, let me talk you through the variables of this little experiment. Everything is going to be recorded with the same microphone, which is this SE Electronics X1S condenser. I'm not doing anything in terms of EQ with this microphone. It's just going to be pretty much as is. Everything is then being captured by my interface, which is the Audient ID14. Again, nothing else in the signal chain. It's just taking an XLR from the microphone straight into the interface and then into Logic. Oh, and look, found even more picks. And then last but not least, we have the guitar, which is my trusty Martin DX1 made in the USA with a few war wounds for good measure. So that's pretty much the only equipment that I'm using for this test. And I'm making this video and doing this experiment because I think it's often an element of guitar tone that is completely overlooked. I mean, people tend to spend a lot of money buying, you know, things like overdrive pedals, but just by, I guess, choosing various different picks in different sizes and different thicknesses, you would be surprised as to how much of a difference it does make to your tone. And it's a really, really inexpensive accessory. Now, the reason that I have so many different picks is because I definitely do accumulate them, and I like to try different picks out, especially at the moment when I'm in the process of writing some instrumental music for an EP that's coming out in the next month or so. I'm in the studio on Thursday, which is 2 days from now, the 12th of October, to actually track all of that. And because I'm doing it all on an acoustic guitar, really the only tonal options I have, other than what is going to be happening in post in the studio, are things like what pick I'm going to use. So I've been going, you know, through the motions in terms of trying to figure all this stuff out. And that's why I thought it'd be quite good to do this as a video to sort of share this process with you. So I'm all set up, got my picks here, and I'm just gonna briefly explain what it is that I'm looking for. So firstly, the microphone is positioned in a fairly traditional way, just at roughly the 12th fret, about 6 to 12 inches away from the fretboard, and I'm not going to do anything in post, so this is going to give us the most accurate sound of the guitar. And when it comes to the tone of your guitar picks, I'm really going to try and give a bit of a spectrum in terms of thicknesses and in terms of textures. And we're looking for tone specifically. I want to really see how the picks impact the sound of the guitar. I'm going to do some individual notes, some kind of arpeggios, and some strumming as well. But an often overlooked aspect of guitar tone, and specifically guitar picks, is not necessarily how it sonically impacts the tone of the guitar, but it's also how it feels in your fingers to play the actual picks. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to talk to you about what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling, because how a pick makes you feel is definitely going to impact the way that you play. So let's start, let's start at the kind of thinnest side of the scale. So this is just a Jim Dunlop nylon 0.60 millimeters, so, you know, fairly bendy. These aren't really the types of guitar picks that I enjoy, because when you play single note stuff, it can sound a little bit thin. So for single notes, thin guitar picks can just sound a little bit mellow. They have a very, very soft attack because you have so much flexibility. But where you might want to use a very thin guitar pick is if you're strumming chords. So a thin guitar pick is great for that because, again, that sort of flexibility that it has, you almost don't hear the attack on the strings, you're just hearing the openness of the chords. So, although not an overly versatile pick, if you are a rhythm guitarist specifically, then you're going to want to have this in your accessory kit, whether that is a little pouch or, you know, a pocket. I tend to keep most of my picks in my pocket. I'm sure a lot of you guys can probably relate to that. Now let's go again with the same brand. So this time we're still looking at the Jim Dunlop USA nylon picks, but we've gone up to 0.88 millimeters. Now this one, which you probably can't see on camera, but it has a little bit more stiffness to it. So now when I play that same chord sequence, to my ears, you're still getting a similar tone. It's still very mellow, it's still quite soft, but I can definitely, from where I sit here, I can definitely hear more of the pick noise on the strings. It doesn't sound quite as even across all of the strings. But I think this pick is going to be much better for single note lines or more arpeggiated chords. So again, still pretty soft, but for those single notes, you're getting a little bit more definition with a pick like this. Now, something else to mention. So obviously nylon is giving you a softer sound, but these Jim Dunlop picks also have quite nice texture. So what some guitar players like to do, people like Keith Urban and Vince Gill are advocates of this, is rather than playing the pick with the pointy end hitting the string, you play with the pick on the side and you use the rounded edge to, again, just kind of give the pick a little bit more of an even sound. And when you have something textured like the grip on this pick, you're also going to pick up some of that string, some of that texture on the string. It's pretty subtle, but it is there. But with a pick like this, you will definitely be able to get multiple tones out of it, which I think is actually really nice. Now, moving to a completely different style of pick. This time, we're still looking at Dunlop, but we're going to look at the sort of Tortex line of picks, which is the ones with the cool little turtles on them. So, for electric guitar, this Tortex pick, which is the 0.60mm pick, is the one that I typically go to because I feel like it's a very good middle of the road sort of thickness, and in terms of the texture, these picks almost have a kind of chalky sort of feel to them. So when I play these picks, I feel like I have quite a lot of control, which isn't necessarily always the case with some of the more plasticky picks, because I guess the surface of them is a little bit slippery, and that just means that when I'm playing, especially if I'm playing something faster, I lose that sense of control and therefore potentially confidence to be able to play the types of phrases and licks and riffs that I want to play. Whereas the Tortex ones, you know, they just instill that confidence, because even though it's a smooth pick, you've got something to grip onto there. So let me just play something with this style of pick, and you'll sort of see that it kind of bridges the gap between the thin ones that we were looking at and some of the thicker ones that we'll look at in a little bit. So with this pick, I'm getting loads and loads of definition, and that definition seems to be in the sort of more upper mid-range. You don't get an awful lot of bass with this, especially on an acoustic guitar. Now I'm tuned down to D standard, so I'm in standard tuning but a whole step lower. So the guitar is giving me a little bit more low end. But again, this isn't necessarily giving you a lot of that bass, which is sometimes a good thing, because you don't want an overwhelming amount of bass in your signal, because especially when we start strumming chords, you're just going to get lost in a mix with that. So some of that top end and that upper mid range character is nice. Now if we try strumming, I think that's pretty nice. It's not as mellow as the nylon picks. It definitely has a little bit more presence. You can hear more of the individual strings as you're strumming. But if you are strumming and trying to pick out more individual notes, so if you're doing kind of like a blend of strumming the whole of the string set, but then you're arpeggiating maybe the upper extensions of the chords, like... then it's kind of nice because it sits sort of nicely in the mix for both of those applications. Now, if we move to a slightly thicker version of this pick, which is the 1mm, which is this blue one, again, it's a very, very sort of similar feel in the hands, obviously, but now when I play single notes... Now all of that upper mid-range and that top end is gone, at least to my ears from where I'm sitting. Even though we've only gone up, sort of a couple of sizes, this one is more rigid. But I think because you don't get that flexibility, you've almost then reversed back to sort of the very thin picks with lots of flexibility, where again, you're just not getting that sort of snap and that pop off the string. Now, this will probably have good applications if you're playing electric guitar and maybe you're playing jazz or something that is very mellow and doesn't have a very fast attack or a very dynamic pick attack. Then that might be something that's quite nice. But I'm really struggling with this on the acoustic because I'm losing some of that sort of clarity in the single notes. Now let's try some strumming patterns. I mean, it sounds nice, it's even across all of the strings, but I'm just not getting any of that definition. And I think with that, coupled with the lower register, if you are playing open chords, for example, that's where you might struggle with this, because I just think you're going to get very kind of overwhelmed by the low end. And especially if you're in a mix, if you're trying to track acoustic guitars in a song, or if you're playing in a band and you're an acoustic player, then yeah, you might get a little bit swamped out by some of the low end of a pick like this. So again, it's just something to think about. Again, I like the texture of this, I like how it feels in the fingers, but tonally, the difference between the blue Tortex and the orange Tortex, which is only 0.40 of a millimeter, is massive. So let's go, speaking of massive, let's have a look at another different style of pick. So this is one of the big stubby picks. Again, I believe it's by Dunlop. This is plastic. It's a little bit more pointed. It's a little bit wider. And it has like an indentation in the center of the pick, which is kind of like a groove to fit your thumb. And that groove is textured. So although this is plastic and doesn't have that chalky coating, because you have that texture for the thumb grip, I actually think this is a really comfortable pick to play. I used to play some of the Dunlop Jazz 3s, which is kind of like a similar shape to this, but just smaller. But I think for jazz and for potentially bluegrass or flat picking, this could be quite a nice option. So let's see if the plastic is going to change the sound. So this is a 2mm, so it's basically twice the thickness of the blue Tortex, which is the last one that we looked at. But let's see if it still has that dead response on single notes that the blue Tortex had. So twice the thickness, but some of that top end has come back. I'm still getting a lot of that low end, which I was expecting to get from a very thick pick. However, I think the plastic, as opposed to the sort of textured chalky plastic of the Tortex ones, I think this sort of uncoated plastic is giving you a lot of that high end and sort of upper mid-range frequencies, kind of bringing all of that back in. I think this, out of all of them, is the most comfortable to hold. Ergonomically speaking, this is just really, really nice. The downsides that I'm going to sort of experience with this, I think, is basically when it comes to sort of strumming. It's sort of here nor there. The mid-range is kind of scooped on this one. You get a lot of low end when you're strumming. Does try to bring out some of that low end character. You get the upper mids and the sort of higher frequencies from the plastic, but all of that mid-range is kind of scooped out, which, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It all kind of depends on the situation, I suppose. But I feel like when you're strumming, this is kind of no man's land. It's not really kind of excelling at any one aspect. But if you're playing lead, or if you're just playing single notes, or if you're flat picking, I think this could be a really, really good option. So again, this is just hopefully giving you an idea of the tonal differences, and I hope this has kind of come across in the microphone. I'm sort of nervous to review this in Logic, because otherwise I've just wasted 15 minutes of everybody's time. But I definitely think it's something to consider if you're not really enjoying the sound of your guitar, especially acoustic. If you're just feeling like, you know, my guitar has no low end, or my guitar has like way too much upper mid range and sort of high end, or, you know, I have not enough mid range so I can't cut through a mix, then it might not really be a problem with your guitar. It might be an issue with your pick. So definitely go and check out, you know, as many different options as you can. I think Dunlop have now started doing these variety packs for certain genres and for certain guitars. There's an acoustic guitar one, which just has a bit of a selection already in there for different thicknesses and textures. But I definitely think it's kind of like a tone secret that needs to be sort of like, you know, less well kept, because there are tons of tonal variation available just from your picks. So I hope you found this video helpful. Like I said, it was not really scientific in any way, shape or form, so I apologize for that if you are wanting to, you know, look further into frequency responses and looking at graphic equalizers and seeing what frequencies each pick, you know, excel at and what frequencies, you know, they don't excel at. That's just not really the bag for me for this video. But I just think it's always best to just listen with your ears and not sort of trust too much on the visual side of things. Looking at an EQ is great, but you just need to like what you're hearing. So that's why I've chosen to do the video in this way. I'm just played a load of picks, and hopefully the audio will be able to help you make up your mind as to which you enjoy. So let me know in the comments which pick you like the sound of, if you do have a favourite, or if there's any picks that you enjoy that I haven't featured in this video, then let us know in the comments, because I think we'd all like some more recommendations and some more things to try out. So thank you so much for watching this video. Apologies that it was a little bit longer than normal, but if you have stuck with me to this point, I'd very, very much appreciate it. Do consider hitting the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified of when new videos go live. And I will see you all in the next one, when I will have recorded my EP. Fingers crossed. All right, guys. See you next time.